Wafube. This is Misael Bey, aka Warlock Asylum. Welcome back to Warlock Asylum Raw Talk. And I'm doing this video on the full moon, so um, just relax, get your drinks on. I mean, like water or juice or whatever. It's full moon, so I don't do anything on the full moon. I don't eat meat on the full moon, none of that. I don't even drink, do those things anyway. So, and that's just me. I mean, everyone has their own preferences or whatever, they find delightful, however it is. Um, Today's video was inspired by a conversation I had with Brett Watts. A lot of times you see him on the Facebook groups and in the Zoo group, or, he's always been a big supporter of the blog page and everything. So, what he kind of said he would like to see covered in video kind of already was on my agenda. So I thought it would be good to do it tonight and, to kind of get a little bit more, just talking with the viewers and everything. But basically his question was, why do good things happen to bad people from an occult perspective? And the topic I was going to originally go with would be genocide. Actually, so they kind of coincide. It's funny because on the topic of genocide, people are not even aware of the process of genocide. So how could they fight against it? You know what I'm saying? And in that answer, you kind of find out why bad things happen to good people. Let me read a quote. The quote is from Gurdjieff. I had a computer. I had grown up on Gurdjieff's work, so I kind of like a lot of his stuff, and it has a deeper meaning to me when you work with his system. But he said, one may say that evil does not exist for a subjective man at all, that there exists only different conceptions of good. Some people say that, oh, there's no evil in the world, especially now you hear that New Age movement. Then he goes on to say, nobody ever does anything deliberately in the interest of evil, for the sake of evil. Everybody acts in the interest of good as he understands it, but everybody understands it in a different way. Consequently, men drown, slay, and kill one another in the interests of good. And that's a lot of what happens because man is asleep. That was a big key element of Gurdjieff's philosophy. Not only Gurdjieff's philosophy, but also the synthesis or the basis of many of the occult teachings in the world. That man is asleep. So here's an example: you have a flock of sheep, and some of the sheep, one of their horn breaks, one of the sheep loses one of his young, one of the sheep, some accident happens to it. Now, if you was to observe this from a farmer's perspective, why are those things happening to the sheep? It's because their ability to discern certain things is not like other sentient creatures, so they fall victim to certain things. And this is the same thing with man. Man falls victim to certain things because they're all asleep. Whether they appear to be good or bad, sleeping people are just sleep. You see what I'm saying? If you see someone sleep, like they sleep in the bed or something like that, and you have a room full of people who are sleeping, how can you really judge them? You see what I'm saying? Because they're all asleep. So a lot of times you heard prophets recorded in the history saying, forgive them because they do not know what they're doing, because they're asleep. You see what I'm saying? The people are asleep. And we're going to get into that a little bit deeper. But before we do, I thought we'd discuss a little bit about genocide, because it kind of plays into the idea of why bad things happen to good people. Genocide, a lot of people don't understand how it works. And this is how it works. It's very simple, but it's very cunning, very slick. and only few people can discern it. Um, Genocide basically works where you get someone into a certain condition of life. You basically oppress them. You push them in this condition that they don't want to be into. Now, what happens is that these people become filled with anger. Like, oh man, this dude did this to us. This dude did this to us. A lot of it is like the minority experiences that we see in America today. Oh man, this dude, he did this and he did that to my people. That sort of thing. However, here's the situation. Even though the anger is directed towards someone that hurt you or maybe hurt your ancestors, hate knows no boundaries. So once it's in your system, right, you're going to display that all the way around. I give you an example if you don't believe me. You look at somebody coming home from work. They may have some situation in their job. Oh man, I hate this job. Da da, whatever. And then, the guy comes home, the wife answers the door, and he's still riffing. Okay? Now, in a logical state of mind, why would he riff with his wife over something at work? But he's absorbed with hate. So it's the same thing that happens in the communities that are oppressed. Once those people are filled with hate, they're going to turn on each other because they're too distant. Like they're at a distance from the oppressor. And this is known. Statistically, it's drawn out, it's scientifically measured. It's like taking mice, infecting them with a chemical, and putting them all in the same, fish tank or whatever. They're going to attack each other. So even though these people, maybe they have some justification for their hate or whatever, but the fact that they're ingesting the hate is like someone ingesting poison. So in turn, they're going to turn around and interact improperly with the people they should be loving. And that's how genocide works. A lot of people don't know that. In that same manner, as you have genocide, you have good things happening to bad people. This dude, he prays every day, he does this every day, and those sort of things. And none of those things are things that, while they could be said to be admirable, but none of those things really illustrate someone who's awake. And here's why, right? The same way that person at work that we discussed earlier could get upset and carry his hate to his wife at home, the person who prays, does his lawn every week, takes his family out, he's under that same law. He's under that same law. Here's how it works. There's several laws in the universe. There's the law of accidents. That's a law. Accidents operate under a law. There's a law of cause and effect. There's different laws in the universe, and as a person matures and awakens, they get to understand these laws and they can act in a way where they can move. However, most people in the world are asleep. So they're under the law of cause and effect. They're under the law of accidents, and they're not aware that these things are even laws. They're not aware of that. So they become subject to them. And in becoming subject to them, they're on the same level as a person who apparently does evil. You see what I'm saying? What Gurdjieff was saying was that no one does evil for the sake of evil, but they're only acting out the sleepy state that they're in. Okay, it talks about this in the Ivory Tablets, heavily in the later chapters. The Ivory Tablets of the Crow is the exact title of the book. But these people are all sleeping because they're under the rulership of the emotions. A person, they may be like, oh man, let's do this, that, and the other, and they're happy. Then something happens, they're sad. They're not creating anything. Even if they do magic, it's only putting them to sleep further. This is why sometimes I'm a little bit more discreet than I was when I first started. You know what I'm saying? Teaching people alchemy and occultism, Necronomicon and Zulu, those sort of things, Reiki and stuff, because people, they can use those things to get out of their sleepy state, but a lot of times they use those things to reinforce their sleepy state. For example, um, something will come into a person's existence and it will cause them to display a certain emotion, and right away they want to pick up and do some ritual. They're under sleep. They're asleep because they're under the influence of a certain emotional state. And although it may seem like tragedy, like, man, why did this happen, to this person? First, we don't know what laws, like what lessons they have to learn in life. In Freemasonry, they say if you see a person with two broken legs and they ask you to heal one leg and keep moving, because you don't know what lessons they have to learn in the universe. You don't know if karma was the cause of them breaking their legs. You don't know. You see what I'm saying? So that's one thing. Sometimes it could just be hidden karma. Sometimes it could be, yeah, this person may be a good person, but if they don't know how to alchemate what's going on internally, they can have inner fears that happen to jump off. A lot of different things that can happen, you see. So, these people are not under a clear point perfection or protection. They're just under the law of imitation. So while a person may seem to be good, I'll give you an example. Even if you look out into the world, most of the times you're going to find every person's actions is imitating something they saw. Like, hey, I saw this on TV. And then they pick it up and they mimic it. They mimic it. They mimic the behavior. Hey, I like how this came out. They want to be in that role. So they adjust their whole lifestyle to doing that. You know what I'm saying? For example, like you see people, it happens a lot in religions. There's a lot of good people in religion. But are they awake or are they asleep? For example, you see a person and let's say, they learned about the Bible and stuff like that. Now all of a sudden, they could have been a certain type of way before, but now all of a sudden, well, the Bible says this and the Bible says that. And they're saying stuff that they heard at church and saying stuff that other people have heard. But if you ask them a question about what they're saying, they can't explain it. So what condition are they in? They're asleep, where everyone is imitating something around them, like insanity. Like you wake up neutral, right? Well, you're asleep essentially. But in the physical waking state, you're collecting all this information. How much of it is really you and how much of it is imitation? Then you're under the realm of emotions. Okay, so you're under the planetary realm. So you're on the realm of cause and effect. That's the planetary realm. That's the planetary realm. The Mad Arab mentions about, when you're gatewalking, you learn to control the affairs of life. He's not talking about a ritual where you put a little of this oil into this. He's talking about your awareness. Your awareness that you're climbing out of the planetary realm or you're in the planetary realm. And this is the realm where shifts happen, cause and effect. So in the cosmology of the universe, for people who are more aware, you can actually see the state that man is in. Man is on this planet. He doesn't know why he's on the planet. Right? At this stage in the game, maybe people knew in ancient times. He doesn't know where he's going. What does he really know? Whether he's good or bad. So they're both in the same category because they're both asleep. So anything can happen to them that happens to sleeping people. You see what I'm saying? Exceptionally, um, a good person, uh, maybe they have a clearer shot to get into the work. But most of the times, even good people are imitating what they've learned, from others or imitating a certain situation. Now, the mechanics of goodness is usually more prosperous than someone who's acting in a way that's indifferent. But imitating those mechanics doesn't mean that you're awake. It just means that, hey, and a lot of times, even the motives for doing things that are quote unquote good is false because the person is only looking to gain some pleasurable state that they can be hypnotized in. You got so much hypnotism going on, it's sad. I look at like, you get to work on Monday. Oh man, I can't wait for the week to be over. Now you keep doing that, and then later down your line in life, you wonder, man, why time flies so fast? Because you keep waiting, trying to rush through the week or whatever. You see what I'm saying? And you're not in a good space because essentially you're not happy. You have to act indifferent to what you really are for 8 hours a day. Okay? What is that going to produce in the individual? That's one scenario. All these things, these other scenarios, you could be in situations where you have to do business with people that you don't care about, or just a lot of different situations. But all these things, these situations, for the better or the worse, doesn't dictate that a person is not sleeping. You see what I'm saying? So in sleep, things will happen to all who are sleeping, good and bad. They're just only principles of the greater universe, and that's the situation, totally. And that shouldn't be taken to like a negative completely, where people are just a herd and all that sort of thing. But people are asleep. You see, so when you're asleep, whatever influences are going on in the house around you, whatever, you're asleep to them. And those things could affect you for better or for worse. You see. So the main idea is to kind of try to get to a path that you can awaken. And through that, you could sort of avert a lot of different harms and work towards prosperity. That's the thing. But a lot of things that are out here are definitely traps for the mind and traps for the soul. You know what I'm saying? So with genocide, it works in the same way. These people are asleep. They may be aware of a fact, and it's so sad because now it's to the point where, like, because they're so much in sleep, so much entertained, that if you come at them with some stuff that is actually historical or may have happened, they'll denounce it because in their sleep, you know what I'm saying? And being awake doesn't mean that you know all the facts. It just means that you know what your process is. So, but I'm just using that as an example. I'm thinking of something that I read about earlier where a congresswoman, I think she was Republican, she was saying that lynchings were originally, for Republicans or whatever. And actually, that is a correct statement. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people were lynched. It just wasn't black people. You know what I'm saying? But Republicans were lynched. Democrats wasn't lynched. Republicans were lynched. You know what I'm saying? You wouldn't think so the way that political things look today. But a lot of reasons why bad things happen to good people, unfortunately, is because these people are not awake. They're sleeping. They're just only involved in imitated behavior. And they're doing it People are doing things to become conscious. You know, that like, hey, let me do this, let me follow this church, or let me go to this temple, or whatever, because they're trying to do, to become awake. I can't, you know, there's so the formula of awakening is the same psychologically, but the method could be various. It's like someone awakening you from sleep. It's like the same process everyone goes through when awakening from sleep. Okay. However, the process, the psychological process is the same, but the methods of awakening, some women could take a broom and poke you, someone could shake you. All those methods are different, is what I mean. But the basic process is the same. So I can't say, you know, this way is this and this way is that. And once you understand that, a lot of debating about religion and, this way is this and this is that. I know, like, I'll be honest with you, give you another example. A lot of people who are involved in occult science, who are practicing occultism, half of those people are asleep. Half of them are asleep. You know why? Because you can see what they're saying. As soon as something happens, oh man, I'm going to do this to you. They're asleep. They're under the influence of an emotion. They're drunk from it. And they don't even realize the consequences of their own actions on a magical level. Like just even what's written about in occultism. Like, hey, you do this, you're going to mess up your kids. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. They don't even realize that because they're asleep. All they know is that this thing does enter them, this anger entered them because of something, and they're doing it for so petty reasons, But I would say 50%. I would even say 90% of practicing occultists, a lot of them are asleep because they take certain things first. Occult science is not really clearly defined today. So a lot of times, someone who's practicing the old religion will say that they're an occultist. And so when you ask them about how does these things affect, all they know is that this is more phenomenal than that, so it's more powerful. But they're really asleep. All of these people are asleep because they're not aware of themselves. Now, once they become aware of themselves, it's possible that they could do. So all of humanity is like a 3-month-old baby. Now what can happen to that child, could vary depending on where they live at or the conditions of the house, the temperature, how they survive through winter. However, one 3-month-old child and another 3-month-old child, they're not really responsible for what they're doing, and they're not affecting anything at all. They're not affecting anything at all. And if you don't believe me, you look at life. You look at what was going on 3,000 years ago. Look at those stories. Do people really remember them today? I mean, Alexander the Great this dude was huge. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was bigger than Genghis Khan and Hitler. I wouldn't say Genghis Khan, but he was bigger than Hitler. Alexander the Great was. But how many people talk about him today? Right? Are you that big? Are you as big as Alexander the Great was in the world during his time? How many people are going to talk about you in the future? But Alexander the Great, he still could have been asleep. You see what I'm saying? Because even the odds of being rich and famous, all those things are a state of humanity in sleep because they don't know where they're going and they don't know how reality is created. So certain things may happen by chance. Hey, this dude, whatever. Sometimes people are under the influence and may get something from the spirit world and make an invention. Spirits do inspire inventions also. And that person is used as a vessel because these things have to come into society for man to move forward. But very few people are awake, so they really can't do. All they can do is sleep. And unfortunately, this is why Bad things happen to quote unquote good people because, from a universal level, they're not looking at the resonance of morality. They're looking on the resonance of being awake or asleep. Now, of course, a person who is following guidelines versus a person who's not, in the general consensus, they're a little bit lighter, quite a bit cleaner, but they're still asleep. The condition itself is not really different, although you know the the um, the person could be a little bit brighter, but the condition is still the same. You see what I'm saying? The condition is still the same. And so it's unfortunate, but those things happen to them. Just think about it. If a person is good, wouldn't they take preventive care to prevent some of those things from happening, or see it because they're asleep? They're not in the moment. You see what I'm saying? They can fall asleep, and this is what happens, unfortunately. But this is why good things happen, bad things happen to good people, and it's also why a lot of people who are oppressed by genocide can't get out of it, because in both cases they're asleep. More with the genocide is because of emotional drunkenness, because these people have become consumed with hate, and they're right, and that's where right gets you at. Being right, I'm right, and right can get you into a war. Right can take you out of here because you're consumed. That state of anger is going to try to find a way into your system. And if you allow it into your system, it's going to give you all the excuses you need for it to stay there. But as long as you harbor anger, and then you harbor it as a community, you're not going to survive. It's different than being angry than harboring anger. You see what I'm saying? Like, hey, they did this, it goes back to one experience I had. When I met a guy, I was working on a book, and this guy started talking to me in a Tibetan shop. He was from Tibet, and he said, we Tibetans, we could hate the Chinese, but what would that make us? And I completely understood what he was saying, because those things in the spiritual realm, in the invisible realms, those qualities are like poisons. Some of them are useful, right? Some of those qualities are useful, and they're useful if you know how to ride the wave of those things. But when you can become consumed with that, it leads to depression, it leads to corruption, and it just leads to hypocrisy. You know what I'm saying? Let out that, and don't allow a person to steal your humanity. You see what I'm saying? Um, but what I've noticed, you know, just with people, is people do strive to complete themselves in the way they best know how. A lot of times people will get on these fronts and they start getting political, and some people can't move on from that. They just believe, oh man, the government, man, you got a lifetime fight. It's wrong, but it's wrong because of other reasons that are invisible. And it's not going to change, in a certain way unless the world changes itself, which the world is constantly changing. Then you have some people who can move on past that and work on cultivating themselves, and they'll just get stuck, on a certain theory that they heard, and all this other kind of stuff, and they'll stay in this box and dig a grave for themselves in that box due to the beliefs that they have as an occultist. I'll give you an example. I met a couple of people in the Necronomicon world, right? And Necronomicon is a solid book. And one thing that people are not aware of sometimes going into stuff is that that this world has structure. It has laws, it has walls, it has concrete that you can walk on. And it's the same way in the spirit world. It has all those things. So it's nothing that it's all in your mind. Oh man, it's all in your mind. And I mean, And the level of subconscious creating your reality, yes. But when you tap into other realms, those realms exist. It's like if I go to someone's house that's different from my house, it's not all in my mind. I'm at someone's house physically. You can go to physical locations in the astral. It's not all in your mind. Another thing about the neck is that, or about Sumeria, any mythology, is the mythology describes how energy moves that's emotional, right? You tell these people that don't do anything outside of mythology, but their pride and ego, they talk to everybody. They talk to Inky, they talk to these people. He said this, that, and the other, and it's totally out of character than what the mythology said. It's bogus. That's how you can tell a trick's a spirit. If it's outside the preview of what the mythology says, which is a schematic of how energy works, but they're going to believe in it. You know why? Because they're asleep. They're asleep. You know what I'm saying? And it's hard. It's easy to break out of sleep, to be honest with you. However, it's hard if you're entrenched in egotism. It's very hard. But I don't want to stay too long because I know you guys are going to do some stuff, tonight and tomorrow night during the full moon days. But I want to drop that on you about genocide and about why bad things happen to good people. And I'm going to stretch that out and I'm going to open this thing up and I'm going to say good night.